The executive, or the sector conference 2 years ago had considered a resolution about Julian Assange, who is facing charges by the United States government under the Espionage Act and many others, and is in the process of being extradited to the United States. Almost every single union, I mean, I haven't counted it all, but the big journalism unions around the world have called for the U.S. government to drop its charges and not try to extradite Julian Assange because of the fact that publishing information should not be a criminal offense. And the sector conference augmented the resolution that was submitted last year, but in that time, several publishers have actually come forward also calling for the charges to be dropped. And I think as the only union, at least large union of journalists in the world, we're sort of the ones that are silent on this issue. So this was a resolution that came from the Pacific Media Workers Guild through the Executive Council, and we made some edits to it. So I will read it, but it has been moved and seconded by the Executive Council. The NewsGuild CWA calls for charges to be dropped against Julian Assange. Wikileaks founder and publisher Julian Assange has been imprisoned in the United Kingdom and threatened with extradition to the United States for espionage. The International Federation of Journalists, The Guardian, and the New York Times have called for charges against him to be dropped. The Australian Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance, of which Assange has been a member of since 2007, has opposed his extradition to the United States and supported his return to Australia. Resolved, the NewsGuild CWA calls for the charges against Julian Assange to be dropped, and we basically have a letter that we would send to President Biden and Attorney General Merrick Garland that says such. So that resolution has been moved and seconded by the Executive Council and edited as you got it in your packet.
Oh, yeah. Madison Castle's Local 37074. I hear where this is coming from and the intent of it about, basically prosecuting folks for release of information. However, Julian Assange is not the hill which he died on. I'm sorry. He had multiple, sexual assault allegations, and the charges were dropped, but not because they didn't think they could win in the sense of that the evidence was not there when they first brought those charges, but because he had been in hiding for so long, or when he was in the Ecuadorian embassy, sorry y'all, they basically, the evidence degradation was happening in such a way that they were like, we can't do this. And the earlier charges, they couldn't even continue with because basically statute of limitations and stuff in Sweden. I'm not a Swedish lawyer, so do not, quote me on exactly what that was. But anyway, I'm sorry, do I think that it's bullshit that they're doing this to somebody who is releasing information? Yes. But Julian Assange is not somebody that we should be like, drop the charges, and especially not saying in the resolution, the NewsGuild CWA calls for the charges against Julian Assange to be dropped. It feels so vague that it just really bothers me. And so I don't think we should support this. I don't think we should do it. And I understand that we're, the group of, workers and all those things that are in the journalist industry. But Julian Assange is not a person that I think we should be like, oh yeah, we shouldn't do, or you should drop the charges against him. And when we know that he had all of these allegations against him. I mean, we've had this conversation about BP Mooney, and now we're gonna sit here and say something essentially in defense of Julian Assange. Now, you could change something probably and make it where it's just about the US shouldn't be bringing charges against people in this way and not mention him at all. But at this point, I'm just a solid no on it. So, and I would encourage others to be the same.
Further discussion?
Arnie Nelson, Washington, Baltimore, 32035. I also stand in opposition to this resolution. building off what my previous sibling said about Julian Assange, not to mention the way in which just text messages that he sent that he referred to Chelsea Manning by their dead name and in other disparaging ways referring to trans persons. So again, not that the principle of journalistic independence, of whistleblowing, but I'd rather see a resolution about how we're affirming the choices that Chelsea Manning made, who took the real struggle and took the real punishment for what happened around Wikileaks. But I can't in good conscience stand by someone who, in some ways, actively colluded with the Trump campaign and Russian military intelligence to use the important part of the fourth estate of the press to be that watchdog, to make sure that the sun shines upon all that corruption and all that nefarious deeds and all the military coups and what have you. I want to see a resolution about that and not focused on one person, but the principles that we believe in and that we stand in as NewsGuild members and as the journalists in this room. Thank you.
Hi, Esteban Gil, local 32035. I work at the Southern Poverty Law Center. I do criminal justice reform, and we are often put in a position where we have to support people or causes who've often done the worst things. So I just want folks to remember that we're not defined by the worst things we've done. I think this situation is complicated. I would like to see perhaps a little more clarity to address the comrades' remarks so far in opposition. But, you know, as unionists, as union militants, we're here to build a society, right? We're here to stop empire, or I'm here to stop empire. And exposing the war crimes of the United States government that's why they're going after Assange. They're not going after Assange because of the awful person he is and the things he's done. They're going after him because he exposed their war crimes. And, you know, our employers, mine included, benefit from empire. And any chance we have to confront, expose, and dismantle empire, we should take it and we should be supportive of it. Thank you.
Smith, CWA Canada. I too am in favor of this. I think it's necessary. I think a lot of our heroes and people who change the world, they're not necessarily perfect people. Everybody is not a saint, but that's not the point. In this case, he exposed information that powerful people wanted to be kept secret. That's our whole job. We spend our careers doing that and fighting against companies who try to keep things quiet, who lie and hide the facts. He took a huge chance and he's changing the world. History will be on his side. Is he perfect and a wonderful person? I don't know, but I think it's not relevant. The point is what he's done has opened the eyes of all of us to the kinds of things that are going on and still go on, probably. So I urge you to support this. Michael.
Michael Cabot-Antoine, Pacific Media Workers, 39521. We've discussed this both last time and this time in our local, and the reason it came forward is just like other people have been saying. This is not about the person, this is about the issue. Sometimes you need to think in broader, more global terms. But I share the concerns about the sexual assault allegations and and other offenses, and I would propose that maybe we amend the resolution to specify that we want to drop the espionage charges. Maybe some other charges come up. I don't understand, the legal ramifications of how that might work. But I think we should specify that it's the espionage charges we're talking about, not any of the sexual assault charges. And that is a motion, yes.
We have a motion from Michael. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
We have a second from others. So do we have any discussion on the amendment?
Matt Pierce, 39213. This actually, I was at the last sector conference, I raised the exact same issue about the sexual assault charges against Assange that were dropped because of the degradation of evidence, not that he was, found not guilty, and I raised concerns about that because somewhat like now, we were dealing with concerns at the time with the then Pittsburgh local president about, the sexual harassment problems, and so we were at the exact, literally they were like back-to-back motions where we were like condemning sexual harassment and assault, and then we had a resolution, you know, sort of supporting Julian Assange in the next breath, which was too much for me to bear at the time. You know, I've had a couple of years to sit on that, you know, and looking again at the narrow principles of the case here about what he's charged with, the espionage charges. I think with this amendment from my brother, the Pacific Media Workers Guild, I would support this resolution this time.
Madison Castle's Local 37074. I'll be honest, like, I understand that people aren't perfect in respect to Esteban, is that right? That spoke earlier about not being remembered for the worst thing you ever did. But I'm in the space of, he is the face of this. That is what this is getting to. And I really don't like, it makes me feel icky. Like, it really makes me feel icky. I don't think, you know, I understand that they're separate issues technically, but the way that he had avoided all of the things before was by, you know, essentially jumping bail or bond or whatever it was and hiding in an embassy, which then made it so the case that was brought against him on the sexual assault allegations couldn't go through. So at the end of the day, even if we are saying espionage charges, it's still Julian Assange that is the face of this. And I feel really uncomfortable with it. It makes me feel icky and weird. And I understand the issue, and to Brother Mike's previous point is, if we're sticking to an issue and thinking in more global terms, then it should be about an issue and not about a person. And so this doesn't get to the root of my inherent problem with this, so I am opposed to this motion and opposed to the overall resolution.
Michael Ferreira, California Federation of Interpreters, Local 39,000. I'd like to throw out like a bigger picture, if I may. Julian Assange isn't the only person who's being charged with, the only journalist who's being charged with espionage. I think we have somebody right now in Russia who's being charged with espionage.
And it's, I'm sorry, but it's not on your agenda, but we do have a resolution involving that and coming up.
Okay, and I'm good with that, but what I'm trying to say here is, what is the core problem here? Is when anything comes, this is the way I see it, and I don't work in your profession, but this is the way I see it. If I was going to read this, the way I see it is, the problem is, whenever truth comes to light, and it's against a governmental agent, you know, the government or an agency within a government, you know, I remember the shit hit the fan when, you know, all this reporting came out about where did all the money go in the Pentagon. And immediately after that, these journalists were hounded and things like that. So I was wondering if we could take what the core problem is. You know, what you guys actually do is bring facts to life, bring truth, you know. You make governments and agencies within governments and you know, you sit there and, I forgot the word for it, that's not good for an interpreter, but, you know, you hold them accountable, that's it. You hold them accountable. And I think we could craft this and then take Julian Assange out as the main focus, that all this stuff about him, and simply use it as an example, such as has happened with Julian Assange, or such as, and others, and we can name others that we think may be in a similar situation. I think we need to bring to light what is basically the First Amendment right for us here, but a right that everybody has to know the truth. Okay, that's really what we're trying to get to here, or am I wrong in that?
That's basically the exact resolution we passed when we had this conversation last time. We took his name out and then we condemned the use of the Espionage Act for charges. The only thing is the charges against him aren't just an Espionage Act, so.
So
I'd like to remind everybody, we're talking about the amendment right now to add the word espionage and not the overall resolution. We will get back to the overall resolution.
okay, well, I mean, I was just going off of what my colleague here said. So, I mean, the actual the resolution, the espionage charges, is it the Espionage Act or the espionage charges? But I'm just thinking here that, in a sense, well, if we're gonna be making changes, let's make changes to highlight what the problem is internationally, not just, you know, here in this country. And then give examples of that. That's, thank you.
Just speaking to the topic of making, well, Andy Grimm, 34071. If we were writing a story about Julian Assange as journalists, we would never relieve the fact that he did have this controversy, that he was credibly accused of these crimes. Would an amendment adding, in addition to the word espionage, some condemnation of that behavior and an expression that it is the abuse of the Espionage Act, or, you know, being punished for essentially doing something journalistic is what we are condemning, or why we are calling for the charges to be dropped, and acknowledge that he is a troubled person.
Can I call the question on this amendment so we can get it back to the overall?
Have we had 3 people speak on both sides? Yes, I think I'm going to go with yes. Sorry. We had the question called on the amendment to add the word espionage to the resolution. We will get back to the overall resolution. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it, people. So now we're back to the overall resolution, which now reads, calls for espionage charges against Julian Assange to be dropped. Yes.
Hi, I'm Isabel Aries from 37074. I don't believe that we have to compromise our morals in order to support other morals. We do not need to support somebody that's been credibly accused of sexual assault in order to support journalists around the world that do deserve the freedom to print like important information and not be retaliated upon by governments. And there's a difference between somebody like not being an angel and messing up in their life. Like God knows I've fucked up more times than I can count, probably including swearing in front of so many important people right now. That is not the same as like committing violence against other people, the way that sexual assault is a violent act. And to, instead of rallying around a cause, and you know, I'm very pleased that there is a similar resolution for Evan, but to rally around this person instead of around the cause is, I think, you know, despite the fact that we've changed it to espionage charges, is still a support of him in himself. Like, I organize workers, and when a member of their union messes up and puts somebody else in harm's way and gets fired for it, what I tell those workers is, you don't need to support that person when they like messed up, when they went against policy, when somebody got hurt. What you need to support is the fact that there is not a secure grievance process in place, that that person wasn't actually, you know, given their Weingarten rights, that, you know, there was not a secure policy that all of you can rely on if you also mess up. Like, you don't rally around somebody that has messed up. You rally around the issue and like the safety of all workers. And so I strongly oppose this resolution, and I would also ask for your no vote. Thank you.
Arnie Nelson, 32035, rising again, even against this amended resolution, because it is, like, at the end of the day, with the coercive power of the state to try to suppress those who would speak against it for its wrongs. And I want to see a resolution calling for the repeal of the Espionage Act and the Sedition Acts, because that's what's gotten us to this point. That's what's enabled the abuse of government power. And as someone who was raised in the Quaker faith, which knows a thing or two about getting beat up and getting locked up for speaking out against war and violence, I can't come to consensus on this in good faith. I can't, as a survivor of physical, sexual abuse and of workplace sexual harassment, I can't in good conscience. And just because the people who do that to me are now parents in their own right, established members of the community. That doesn't mean that I was not wrong. That does not mean that I can't look at them and all the good that they've done, because I can't unpack that good without the bad that they did to me. But I think that's something I was taught as a young Quaker. You focus on the problem, not the person. And to me, this resolution is focusing on the person, not the problem. And so I would urge a no vote for that reason. Thank you.
Trish?
Trish Corley, 1096. Last month, Daniel Ellsberg died. I had no idea who he was. I was not alive when the Pentagon Papers happened. I watched the movie because it had Tom Hanks, and that is the Bronx print plant from News Corp. Don't you love our conveyor system? In there, and I loved every minute of watching my print plant. So I am not in-depth knowledge on anything about this other than, I'm not a reporter, I'm a tech person, so casual interest. But I have heard a lot about Daniel Ellsberg since his death last month. And I found a quote from him from 2019 that I thought was very interesting. 48 years ago, I was the first journalistic source to be indicted. There have been perhaps a dozen since then, 9 under President Obama. But Julian Assange is the first journalist to be indicted. If he is extradited to the U.S. and convicted, he will not be the last. The First Amendment is a pillar of our democracy, and this is an assault on it. If freedom of speech is violated to this extent, our republic is in danger. Unauthorized disclosures are the lifeblood of the republic. This is made to progressive.org in 2019. I don't disagree with anybody who's brought up the sexual assault stuff at all. There are too many people in this room who have lived through that, but I think Daniel Ellsberg's point is to be taken seriously. If this goes through, it is a huge mark on all of us and all of our jobs and all of our work, even if I'm just a tech.
Justin Moyer, Washington 32035. This seems serious. I don't know which way to vote. Vote your conscience. I call the question.
Thank you. The question is called. All those in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
What? Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor of the call of question? I keep missing that. Thank you, Patty. All those in favor of calling the question? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Now, so that passes. We are calling the question. Now, all those in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Division.
Division? I think the noes had it, but we'll see. Okay, division of the House, raise your hands if you are yes. 37 is majority.
I got 31.
31. All those opposed? All right, the noes have it, the resolution does not pass. Okay, next. discuss the, is it Gershkovich? Gershkovich. This is about Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, who's been held over 100 days in a Russian prison.
I don't know if you guys can even see me over this. So Evan Gershkovich, 100 days. On March 30th, 2023, Evan Gershkovich, a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, was following a lead for a story. While he was in, and I know I'm going to mess up this count, but Yekaterinburg, something like that. Yekaterinburg, approximately 800 miles east of Moscow. Gershkovich was arrested by the FSB, Russia's main security agency, and accused of espionage. He is the first American journalist detained in Russia on such charges since the Cold War. Gershkovich's detention has been condemned by governments and news organizations around the world. On April 4th, the NewsGuild CWA President John Schlois wrote to President Biden and said, quote, "We stand with Mr. Gershkovich's colleagues and Wall Street Journal management in denouncing the arrest and the charges against him as meritless," end quote. John called on President Biden to declare Evan wrongfully detained, to permit assistance under the Robert Levinson Hostage Recovery and Hostage-Taking Accountability Act. On April 10th, U.S. officials designated Gershkovich as wrongfully detained. July 7th, 2023 marks 100 days since Gershkovich's arrest. He remains locked up within the notorious Lefortovo prison in Moscow. Evan Gershkovich is the American son of Jews who fled the Soviet Union for the U.S. in the 1970s. He grew up in New Jersey, attended public schools, and graduated from Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine, where he wrote for the campus newspaper. He is a beloved son, friend, and colleague. He is not a spy, he is a journalist. Gershkovich's continued detention is an affront to press freedom and an assault on the truth. No journalist should be arrested for doing their job. Resolved, the NewsGuild CWA continues to press the Biden administration to provide Gershkovich with assistance and to secure the bipartisan support of Congress in demanding his release. We call on the United States government to steadfastly pursue all appropriate efforts until Gershkovich is freed. TNG CWA further calls on supporters of journalism everywhere to publicize Gershkovich's name and his work. Freedom depends on a press free to report the facts without fear or favor. I don't know if you guys saw, there's a bunch of buttons over on the table, the Free Evan Now buttons. I know everyone at the Wall Street Journal has been wearing them, and various other unions throughout the country, but I urge you all to please take a pin and wear it, and when anyone asks what it means, explain to them about how Evan Gershkovich has been held for just doing his job.
The executive committee has moved and seconded this resolution. Do we have any further discussion?
Madison passes Local 37074. Just a point of clarification, so with the previous resolution, we were talking about sending, you had stuff that you were going to send to President Biden or whatever, right? So what are the steps for this one if it's passed?
Well, after this sector conference, I'm going to call President Biden and tell him what I know. Hey, Joe. I think what we're going to do is we're going to do exactly what IAPI tells us to do and continue to coordinate with them and press in all the ways that make sense with our IAPI local 1096.
Matt Pierce, 39213. I rise in strong support of this resolution, strong support of IAPI, strong support of the journalists still reporting in Russia and on the front lines in Ukraine. They do a service to our profession. They're incredibly brave. I'm proud to support this resolution.
Further comments or discussion? All in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. I'm going to say thank you.